Okay, welcome to part 3 of my notes on slope, and today we're going to be looking at graphing when given an equation. Now, we've already done this in a previous lesson. However, when we did it in the previous lesson, we made an input-output table or XY coordinate table, and we graphed it that way. Now I'm going to show you an easier way to graph it when you have an equation written in a certain form. So the equation of a line can be written in many different ways. The slope-intercept, and this is the equation I'm talking about, form of a line is a way of writing the equation so that the slope and the y-intercept can be identified easily. The slope describes the steepness of the line, and the y-intercept is where the line passes through the y-axis. Okay, so the slope-intercept form of a line is given by the following equation. It's y equals mx plus b. We've mentioned this before, where m represents the slope and b represents the y-intercept. And this is a c here, it's hard to tell. Okay, now let's look at our steps for graphing a line that's written in slope-intercept form. So the first step we need to do is identify the y-intercept and place a coordinate on the y-axis. We then identify the slope and write it as a fraction if needed, and when we're going to have to write it as a fraction is when we have an integer. Okay, so if the slope is given by an integer, then you will have to write it as a fraction. And we'll talk about that when we get down to the examples. Graph the slope starting at the y-intercept. Be sure to graph in both directions from the y-intercept. Okay, so make sure in one of them you go up, and then in one of them the rise goes down. If the equations do not contain a b, start at the origin. Okay, because if it doesn't contain a b, then we know that the y-intercept is 0. Okay, let's look at our first example, and it's y equals 2x minus 4. So the first step is to identify the y-intercept. So it's minus 4, which we know that also means negative 4. So we're going to mark the y-axis right here. Okay, now I'm going to identify the slope as 2. However, 2 is an integer, so we have to write it as a fraction. And what number can we put underneath 2 to turn it into an equivalent fraction? That's correct, 1. So now we got a rise of 2 and a run of 1. Now, there are two ways to make a positive slope. Or one, if they're both positive, or if they're both negative, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So I'm going to go in the positive direction first. So the rise is 2, so up positive 2 over positive 1. Up positive 2 over positive 1. Up positive 2 over positive 1. And I'm just showing my counting here. Over positive 1, up 2, over 1. Now, I said to make sure you go in both directions of the y-intercept. So now we're going to go down negative 2. So in order to maintain a positive slope, we have to make them both negative. So now I got to go left 1. Okay, connect your coordinates. And don't forget to put arrows on both ends so that you represent a line. And I'm just going to circle the y-intercept here so you can see the connection. It goes through -4. The equation ends with -4. Okay, let's look at the second example. Now, you notice there is no b, so I'm just going to circle this empty space. And we know that the y-intercept is 0, so we're going to start at the origin. Now I'm going to underline the slope, and it says the slope is -3. This is an integer, so what number do we put underneath it? Once again, put a 1. Now we maintain an equivalent fraction by putting a 1 underneath it. -3 divided by 1 is still -3, so I haven't changed its value. Now notice, it's a negative slope, okay, because the integer in front of it is negative. So when we have a negative slope, either the rise or the run can be negative. Okay, but they both can't be negative at the same time. So if I go in the positive direction, my next move is going to be negative. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to go up 3. And now because I went in the positive direction, now I have to go in the negative direction for the run. So over 1, up 3 over 1. Now, make sure you go the other way. So now I'm going down 3, and I went in the negative direction, so my next move has to be positive. So over 1, then down 3 over 1. Now I'm going to connect these and draw my arrow on the ends. And I'm going to circle the y-intercept, and notice there is no b here, so it goes to the origin. Now, just a quick review of before. If I go back to A and I read it like a book, it slopes up for a positive slope. And if I read this one like a book, it slopes down for a negative slope. Okay, we've got 4 more examples on the back. So turn the page. Okay. Now, once again, same steps. We're going to circle the y-intercept. So it's +1, so we're going to start the graph at +1. We're going to underline the slope, and it's a negative slope. So once again, just like the previous problem, my rise or my run can be negative, but not both at the same time. So my rise is 1, my run is 4, so I'm going to go up 1. Since I went up +1, my next move has to be negative because I'm trying to make a negative slope. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I can't go any further this way without going off the graph. So I'm going to stop there and go back to the y-intercept. I'm going to go down -1. So now to maintain a negative slope, I have to go right +4. And I can't go any further that way. So I'm going to connect my points and draw arrows on the ends to represent a line. And I'm going to circle the y-intercept and notice 1 and 1. Okay. Moving right along to example D, I'm going to circle -1. So that means I'm going to start on the y-axis at -1. I'm going to underline my slope of +4/3. Now once again, if I have a positive slope, they can both be positive or they can both be negative. Okay, so we're going to do a rise of +4, 1, 2, 3, 4, over 3, 1, 2, 3. I can't go any further without going off the graph, so now I'm going to go back to the y-intercept, and I'm going to go down -4, and I'm going to go over -3 because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So I've still maintained the positive slope. And, whoops, let's make the line here. And connect, put the arrows on the ends. Circle the y-intercept of -1, and it matches. Now, let's go back and read this one like a book, and it slopes down, so negative slope. And this one, reading like a book, slopes up, positive slope. Okay, moving right along here. Now it says, try these on your own. So what I want you to do at this point is pause the video and see if you can do these two on your own. Once you've completed these two, turn the video back on and see how you did. And I'll run through these rather quickly so that you can complete your notes. So go ahead and pause the video right now and then turn it back on when you're finished. Go. Okay, welcome back. So hopefully you tried these on your own, and let's see how you did. So this one does not have a b, so we're going to start at the origin. We're going to underline the slope, and it's an integer, so we're going to put 4/1. So positive slopes, so we're going to make sure they're both positive or both negative. So up 4/1, I can't go any further that way. So down -4/1 also makes a positive slope, because when you divide two negatives, it makes a positive. So connect your points and put arrows at the ends. Okay, circle the y-intercept and notice it goes to the origin because there is no ending here. No y-intercept. The y-intercept is actually 0. So, example F, circle the +4, which is the y-intercept. Make a dot at the y-intercept of 4. I have a negative 2/3 slope, so I have to make sure either my rise or my run is negative, but not both at the same time. So I'm going to go up +2, left -3. I'm going to go down 2 over +3. And I'm going to go down 2 over +3. So I'm going to connect the points, and I'm going to put arrows and circle the y-intercept, and it does, of course, match up. Read it like a book, and it slopes down. And I forgot to read this one like a book, and it slopes up. So that concludes our notes, our part 3 notes on slope with an equation, graphing slope with an equation only, and not making a table. I hope you have a great day.